It was the day after Christmas, 1996. The quiet streets of Boulder, Colorado, were covered in snow, wrapped in the calm of the holiday season. But inside one family's home, a story was unfolding that would change the way America looked at mystery forever. At the heart of it was JonBenét Ramsey, a 6-year-old girl, full of life and charm, often seen shining on the stage of child pageants, and deeply loved by her family. What should have been a season of joy instead turned into one of the most haunting unsolved cases in modern history. The police were called in the early hours of the morning. A handwritten note was discovered, strange in both tone and detail. Hours later, the search inside the house revealed something that no one expected, and from that moment on, questions began to multiply faster than answers. For nearly 3 decades, investigators, journalists, and even ordinary people around the world have tried to piece together what really happened that cold December night. Was it the work of someone within the house, or an intruder who found their way in? Every theory seems possible, and yet, the truth still hides in the shadows. Tonight, let us step back into that Colorado home and slowly retrace the events that continue to puzzle the world. Before the tragedy that shook an entire nation, the Ramseys seemed like the picture of an American dream family. John Ramsey was a successful businessman in the technology industry, providing his family with comfort and a life of privilege. His wife, Patsy, once a beauty queen herself, was known for her charm and dedication as a mother. Together, they were raising 2 children in their elegant Boulder, Colorado home, a place that appeared safe, warm, and full of promise. At the heart of that home was JonBenét, their youngest child, just 6 years old. She was radiant with energy and adored by those around her. She loved performing, often stepping onto the small stages of child beauty pageants where her bright smile and poise made her stand out. To her parents, she was not just a daughter but a shining star, full of potential and joy. From the outside, the Ramseys had everything: success, love, and a close-knit family life. But what seemed like a storybook picture would soon shatter in the most haunting way imaginable, a way that continues to raise questions, stir debate, and leave an unsettling mystery unsolved even decades later. The morning of December 26, 1996, began like any other in the Ramsey household. The excitement of Christmas Day had only just passed, and the house still carried the warmth of the holiday. But at around 5:30 a.m., everything changed. Patsy Ramsey, waking early, walked down the spiral staircase in her elegant Boulder home. There, on one of the steps, she noticed something unusual: a handwritten letter waiting in the dim light. It was no ordinary note. Spanning 3 full pages, it read like the script of a nightmare. The writer claimed to have taken JonBenét and demanded a ransom of $118,000. The amount was startling, not only because of its precision, but because it matched almost exactly the bonus that John Ramsey had recently received from his company. The message was chillingly specific and unsettlingly personal. The note carried a sharp warning: the Ramseys were not to call the police. Any attempt to reach out for help, it said, would put JonBenét's life in immediate danger. In that quiet, early hour, Patsy's world shifted from the comfort of the holidays into the grip of fear and confusion, of fear that would only deepen with every passing moment of that day. By 5:52, less than half an hour after discovering the ransom note, Patsy Ramsey made a choice that would shape the course of the entire case. Despite the warning written so clearly in the letter, she picked up the phone and dialed 911, her voice urgent and distressed as she reported that her daughter had been kidnapped. The dispatcher on the other end tried to keep her calm, assuring her that officers would arrive soon. But Patsy's fear did not end with that call. Almost immediately afterward, she reached out to friends and neighbors, asking them to come to the house. She needed comfort, someone to lean on in a moment of unthinkable crisis. And they came, filling the Ramsey home with familiar faces, voices, and footsteps. What no one realized at that moment was how important the house itself would become. Every corner, every room, every detail might hold the answer to what had happened to JonBenét. By bringing so many people inside so quickly, the scene became tangled. Evidence was touched, spaces were disturbed, and the clear lines investigators would need soon began to blur. Within minutes of Patsy's call, officers from the Boulder Police Department arrived at the Ramsey home. It was still early morning, the sky just beginning to lighten, and the quiet streets of the neighborhood gave no hint of the chaos unfolding inside. The officers entered quickly, prepared for a kidnapping case, but what they found immediately raised more questions than answers. There were no signs of forced entry. The doors and windows were intact, no locks broken, no glass shattered. To investigators, this suggested something unsettling. Either JonBenét had left the house with someone she knew, or the person responsible was already inside before the family ever went to sleep. Then came the ransom note itself. 3 pages, far longer and more elaborate than any typical note seen in such cases. It was not hurried or brief, but strangely detailed, with phrases that seemed almost theatrical. Even more troubling, the paper and pen used appear to have come from inside the Ramsey home. To the officers standing in that house, it was as though the mystery was already pointing inward, toward the family itself, though no one dared to say it out loud just yet. As the morning stretched on, the Ramsey home grew busier and nosier. Friends, neighbors, even a minister came and went, offering comfort to the shaken family. But while the gestures were kind, the decision to allow so many people inside would soon prove devastating to the investigation. The house, which should have been locked down as a crime scene, was instead treated more like a gathering place. People walked through rooms, touched surfaces, and moved objects without realizing that every step, every small action, might be erasing critical evidence. Potential clues were trampled underfoot, fingerprints were covered, and the fragile picture of what had really happened to JonBenét began to blur beyond repair. Perhaps most crucial of all, one part of the house, the basement, was never thoroughly searched that morning. Despite its importance, despite the possibility that a child might be hidden there, officers left it largely unchecked. Hours slipped away, and with them, the chance to discover the truth when it was still fresh. This oversight would later become one of the most haunting mistakes in the case, a misstep that investigators could never undo. From 6-0 until nearly 1-0, the Ramsey family remained inside their home, surrounded by friends, neighbors, and police officers who were waiting for the kidnapper's next move. The atmosphere was tense and heavy, every tick of the clock echoing through the house as the family clung to the hope that the phone would ring with instructions. John Ramsey, desperate to do something, began preparing the ransom money, the exact $118,000 demanded in the letter. He collected the funds, ready to deliver them at a moment's notice. Yet no call ever came, no message, no second letter. The silence was deafening. Hour after hour passed, and the absence of any contact from the supposed kidnappers only deepened the mystery. The longer it went on, the more uneasy it became. Was JonBenét still alive somewhere, waiting for help that was not coming? Or had the truth already been written into those early morning hours, hidden within the very walls of the house? By 1-0. After hours of waiting in silence, Detective Linda Arndt made a critical decision. She suggested that John Ramsey, together with a close family friend, search the house once more, this time from top to bottom. It was a last attempt to find some overlooked clue, some hidden detail that might explain the unbearable mystery. Their steps eventually led them to the basement. At the end of a corridor, John noticed a small, closed door leading to a storage room. He opened it, and in that moment, the waiting ended. Inside, on the cold floor, lay JonBenét. She was wrapped in a white blanket, a heartbreaking sight that confirmed every parent's worst fear. The discovery shattered the fragile hope that had carried the family through the long morning hours. What had begun as a kidnapping investigation instantly turned into something far darker, something that would haunt not only the Ramseys but an entire nation for decades to come. Overwhelmed with grief and shock, John Ramsey reacted as any father might. Instead of leaving the scene untouched, he gently lifted JonBenét from the basement floor, carried her upstairs into the living room. It was an instinctive act of love, a desperate attempt to bring his daughter back into the light rather than leave her in the shadows of that cold basement. But in doing so, without realizing it, he made a devastating mistake. By moving her body, critical evidence was disturbed, details that might have revealed how JonBenét died, or even who was responsible. Fibers, fingerprints, and other fragile clues were compromised, complicating an investigation that was already full of unanswered questions. What began as a search for truth had now become even more tangled, and from this moment on, every step forward would be clouded by the uncertainty of what had been lost. In the days that followed, JonBenét's body was carefully examined by the coroner, and the findings only deepened the mystery. The autopsy revealed that she had suffered a severe blow to the head, an injury powerful enough to render her unconscious. But that was not all. Around her neck was evidence of strangulation, carried out with a crude garrote device fashioned from a length of cord and the broken handle of a paintbrush taken from inside the Ramsey home. The report also noted troubling indications that suggested the possibility of sexual assault. Yet, even here, the evidence was not definitive, leaving experts divided for decades to come. Some believed these signs pointed to something sinister, while others argued they could be explained in different ways. What became clear, however, was that JonBenét's death was not an accident. It was deliberate, staged in a way that raised even more questions than it answered, and from this point onward, the case would spiral into one of the most controversial investigations in American history. From the very start, suspicion circled tightly around the Ramsey family. Investigators could not ignore that nearly every piece of evidence seemed to come from within the home itself. The ransom note had been written on paper from a Ramsey notepad. The garrote, fashioned from a paintbrush, had been taken from Patsy's own art supplies. Even the location of JonBenét's body hidden in a basement room pointed to someone with intimate knowledge of the house. Because of these details, detectives began looking closely at John, Patsy, and even 9-year-old Burke. Yet despite the mounting theories, nothing ever tied them directly to the crime. There were no fingerprints on the note that matched, no evidence that proved involvement, and no clear motive that made sense. The case had all the signs of being deeply personal, yet at the same time, it lacked the kind of conclusive proof needed to identify a culprit. This tension suspicion without evidence would define the investigation for years to come, fueling public debate and dividing experts into camps that still argue to this very day. As the days turned into months, and the months into years, the case of JonBenét Ramsey seemed to unravel rather than come together. The investigation became tangled in mistakes, conflicting theories, and a relentless storm of media attention. Reporters camped outside the Ramsey home. Headlines filled newspapers across the country, and every new detail, no matter how small, was dissected endlessly. The focus shifted back and forth between the family and the possibility of an unknown intruder, but clarity never came. Decades later, science offered a glimmer of hope. With the rise of advanced technology, investigators revisited the evidence. On JonBenét's clothing, they discovered tiny traces of unidentified male DNA, a clue that seemed promising. Yet even this breakthrough led to more questions than answers, for the source of that DNA remains a mystery. Was it the killers, or merely contamination from the handling of evidence over the years? And so, nearly 3 decades on, the shadow of uncertainty lingers. The question of who was truly responsible continues to haunt investigators, divide experts, and captivate the public. The story of JonBenét Ramsey has become frozen in time, a case where answers remain just out of reach, leaving behind one of the most haunting mysteries in modern American history. And so, the story of JonBenét Ramsey remains suspended between fact and speculation, between what we know and we may never learn. It is a case that began on a quiet winter morning and has since echoed across decades, shaping how we view both tragedy and mystery. For many, it is not only about the unanswered question of who was responsible, but also about how a single event can ripple through time, forever altering the lives it touches. As we close this chapter, we are reminded that history is not only found in dusty books or old headlines. Sometimes, it lives in the shadows of the present, unresolved, unsettling, and unforgettable. If you found this story compelling, I invite you to join me here again. By liking this video and subscribing to the channel, you will ensure you never miss the next journey into the mysteries that continue to shape our world. Until then, thank you for listening, and may your night be a peaceful one.